A year after our divorce, my ex-wife Rachel dared to text me, "I need to talk, today." I stared at my phone for exactly 3 seconds before typing back, "Today, I'm busy. Date night with your sister." The silence that followed was deafening. My name is David Harper, and I'm a 38-year-old IT consultant who learned the hard way that revenge is a dish best served with a side of brutal honesty. That Saturday afternoon text from Rachel was the first contact we'd had in 4 months, not since the lawyers finished dividing up what was left of our 8-year marriage. I should probably explain how we got here. Rachel and I met in college, married young, and spent our 20s building what I thought was a solid life together. She worked in HR at a mid-sized marketing firm. I freelanced in tech consulting, and we had a nice house in suburban Boston with a mortgage that kept us humble. Everything seemed perfect until I discovered she'd been sleeping with Greg Fulton, her married coworker, for 6 months. The discovery came courtesy of a forgotten phone charger. Rachel had left her personal phone at home while rushing to what she claimed was a mandatory weekend training session. When it buzzed with a text from Greg saying, "Can't wait to finish what we started in the supply closet," I knew our marriage was over. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just end relationships, it rewrites history. Suddenly, every late night at the office, every girls' weekend trip, every time she'd been distant or distracted, took on new meaning. I'd been living with a stranger who happened to share my bed and my Netflix password. The divorce was brutal. Rachel played victim, claiming I was emotionally unavailable, and had driven her into another man's arms. Her family rallied around her like she was some wounded bird instead of a woman who'd spent half a year lying to everyone she supposedly loved. Her parents, Robert and Patricia, made their position clear during one particularly uncomfortable mediation session. Rachel made a mistake, but marriages take work from both parties, Patricia had said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that comes from old money and older prejudices. Perhaps if you'd been more attentive to her needs, this wouldn't have happened. I'd wanted to ask if being more attentive included scheduling her affair appointments, but my lawyer kicked me under the table. The only person in Rachel's family who showed me any kindness during that nightmare was her younger sister, Emma. Emma was 32, a nurse at Boston Medical Center, and possessed the rare quality of treating people based on their actions rather than their family connections. While the rest of the family closed ranks around Rachel, Emma quietly reached out. "I'm sorry about what happened," she told me after running into me at a coffee shop 3 months after the divorce was finalized. What she did was wrong, and I told her so. That conversation led to another, then another. Emma was everything Rachel wasn't: genuine, compassionate, and incapable of the kind of calculated cruelty that had defined the end of my marriage. She listened when I talked about feeling like I'd wasted 8 years of my life. She laughed at my jokes, even the bitter ones. And somewhere between coffee dates and long walks through Boston Common, I realized I was falling in love with her. We'd been dating for 3 months when Rachel sent that text. 3 months of keeping our relationship quiet, not out of shame, but out of respect for Emma's complicated family situation. Emma loved her sister despite everything, and we both knew that dating me would create problems she didn't deserve. But that Saturday afternoon, staring at Rachel's demanding text, I was tired of tiptoeing around everyone else's feelings. Rachel had destroyed our marriage without caring about the consequences. Now she wanted to talk on her schedule, with her typical assumption that the world revolved around her needs. So I told her the truth. My phone started ringing within 30 seconds of sending that text. Rachel's name flashed on the screen, and I watched it ring through to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By the time Emma arrived at my apartment for our dinner date, I had 14 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. "What are you talking about?" "This isn't funny, David. Call me back right now. You can't be serious about Emma." "Pick up the phone." Emma saw me silencing another call and raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Rachel found out?" "I may have mentioned our dinner plans," I said, showing her the original text exchange. Emma's eyes widened, then she started laughing. "You told her we were dating via text message. That's either the cruelest thing you've ever done or the most honest." "Probably both," I admitted. "Are you okay with this? Once she knows, everyone in your family will know by morning." Emma was quiet for a moment, looking at my phone as it buzzed with another call. Then she reached over and turned it off completely. "I'm tired of hiding," she said. "If my family can't handle me dating a good man because he used to be married to my sister, that's their problem, not mine." We went to dinner at a small Italian place in the North End, the kind of restaurant where the tables are close together and the wine flows freely. For 2 hours, we pretended my phone didn't exist. We talked about her work at the hospital, my latest consulting project, and our plans for the weekend. It was the kind of easy, comfortable evening that reminded me why I'd fallen for her in the first place. But reality was waiting when we got back to my apartment. The pounding on my door started before I could get my key in the lock. Through the peephole, I could see Rachel pacing on my doorstep like a caged animal. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she was clutching her phone like a weapon. "I know you're in there," she shouted. "I saw you come up the stairs." Emma grabbed my arm. "Should we call the police?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's see what she wants." I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged, creating a 3-inch gap. Rachel's face appeared in the opening, her eyes wild with rage and something that might have been panic. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded. "How could you do this to Emma?" "Do what, exactly?" I asked. "Date a woman who actually respects me?" "She's my sister. This is sick and twisted, and you know it." "What's sick and twisted?" Emma said, stepping into view. "Is cheating on your husband for 6 months and then acting like you're the victim." Rachel's face went white, then red. "Emma, he's using you to get back at me. Can't you see that?" "No, Rachel. He's treating me like an adult who can make her own decisions, something you never learned how to do." The sisters stared at each other through the gap in the door, and I could see years of complicated history playing out in their expressions. Emma's jaw was set with determination, while Rachel looked like she was watching her world collapse in real time. "If you don't end this right now," Rachel said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It's a promise." I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Through the wood, we could hear Rachel screaming obscenities and pounding with her fists. The noise continued for 10 minutes before finally stopping. When I looked through the peephole again, she was gone. Emma was sitting on my couch, her face pale. I've never seen her like that before. "I have," I said. "That's exactly how she looked when I confronted her about Greg." My phone, which I'd forgotten to turn back on, came alive with a symphony of notifications. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, and 6 voicemails. The messages weren't just from Rachel, her entire family had mobilized. Her father, "This is inappropriate and you know it." Her mother, "How dare you involve Emma in your petty revenge?" Her brother Michael, "Stay away from my family or we'll have problems." Various friends and relatives had chimed in with their own versions of outrage, creating a digital lynch mob that would have been impressive if it wasn't so pathetic. But the worst messages were the ones sent to Emma. "How could you betray me like this?" from Rachel. "You're choosing him over your own family." From their mother. "I'm ashamed to call you my daughter." From their father. Emma read through them with tears streaming down her face. "They don't even want to hear my side of the story." "That's because they already decided you're wrong," I said. "Just like they decided Rachel was the victim in our divorce. Maybe I should call them, try to explain." "Emma, look at me." I took her hands in mine. "You don't owe them an explanation for falling in love. You don't owe them an apology for choosing happiness. And you sure as hell don't owe them permission to live your life." She wiped her eyes and nodded. "You're right. I never thought they'd react like this." "I did," I said. "That's why I wanted to keep us quiet. But I'm tired of hiding, and I'm tired of letting Rachel control the narrative." That night, Emma stayed at my apartment. We turned off our phones, ordered pizza, and watched old movies until we fell asleep on the couch. For a few hours, we managed to forget about the storm brewing around us. But storms don't disappear just because you stop watching the weather. Sunday morning brought a new level of chaos. I woke up to find my phone completely dead, not from a drained battery, but from the sheer volume of notifications that had overwhelmed the system. When I plugged it in and powered it back up, the messages started flooding in again. Somewhere in the digital avalanche, I found a voicemail from my business partner Jake that made my blood run cold. "Dave, I don't know what's going on with your personal life, but Rachel called the office yesterday claiming you've been harassing her. She's threatening to file a police report. Call me back ASAP." Emma emerged from the bathroom, her nurse training evident in how quickly she'd composed herself despite yesterday's emotional turmoil. "How bad is it?" "She's claiming I'm harassing her," I said, showing her Jake's message. "She's trying to make me look like the aggressor." "That's insane. She's the one who showed up at your apartment screaming." "Yeah, but who's going to believe that? Her family's already convinced I'm the villain in this story." Emma sat down next to me, her expression thoughtful. "We need evidence, documentation. If she's going to play dirty, we need to be smarter." I'd always admired Emma's analytical mind, but seeing her shift into strategic mode was both impressive and slightly terrifying. She was right, though. Rachel had spent our entire marriage manipulating situations to her advantage, and she wasn't going to stop now. First things first, Emma said. We need to document everything. Screenshots of all her messages, recordings of any phone calls, witnesses to her behavior. You sound like you've done this before. I work in a hospital. Documentation saves lives and careers. She paused. Plus, I've been watching Rachel manipulate people since we were kids. I know how she operates. We spent the next hour organizing evidence. Screenshots of Rachel's threatening texts, photos of her showing up at my apartment, and a detailed timeline of events. Emma also called her friend Sarah, who lived in the building across the street and had witnessed Rachel's meltdown from her window. Sarah saw the whole thing, Emma reported after hanging up. She even took a video when Rachel started pounding on the door. She thought it was a domestic violence situation and was about to call the police. Can she send us the video? Already did. Emma's phone chimed with an incoming message, and she's willing to testify if needed. The video was damning. Rachel looked completely unhinged, screaming and hitting my door with both fists while neighbors watched from their windows. It was impossible to watch it and conclude that I was the one doing the harassing. But Rachel wasn't done. Around noon, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a professional voice identified herself as Detective Lisa Morrison from the Boston Police Department. Mr. Harper, I need you to come down to the station to answer some questions about a harassment complaint that's been filed against you. My stomach dropped. When? Today, if possible. The complainant is quite insistent that this is an urgent matter. I looked at Emma, who was listening to my side of the conversation with growing alarm. Can I ask who filed the complaint? Rachel Harper. She claims you've been stalking and threatening her. She's my ex-wife, and she showed up at my apartment last night making threats. I have video evidence. Mr. Harper, I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you be here by 2 o'clock? After I hung up, Emma was already grabbing her jacket. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yes, I do. This affects me too, and I'm not letting her destroy you with lies. The police station was a study in bureaucratic efficiency and human misery. We sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs for 40 minutes before Detective Morrison called me back. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book. Tell me about your relationship with Rachel Harper, she began. I walked her through our marriage, the divorce, and the events of the past 24 hours. She took notes without comment, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. When I mentioned the video evidence, she perked up. You have video of her at your apartment? A neighbor recorded it. She was pounding on my door and screaming threats. Can you provide a copy of this video? I forwarded the file from Emma's phone while Detective Morrison watched. Her expression shifted as she saw Rachel's behavior, and I could tell the narrative was changing in real time. This doesn't look like the behavior of someone being stalked, she said finally. That's because I'm not stalking her. She found out I'm dating her sister and lost her mind. You're dating her sister? Detective Morrison looked up from her notes. How long has that been going on? 3 months. We kept it quiet to avoid exactly this kind of drama. The detective was quiet for a moment, then closed her notebook. Mr. Harper, based on what I'm seeing here, it appears Ms. Harper may have filed a false report. I'm going to need to speak with her again, and I may need to interview your neighbor who took this video. Does this mean I'm not in trouble? It means the evidence doesn't support her claims. In fact, if this video is authentic, she may be the one who violated the law by threatening you. When I walked out of the police station an hour later, I felt like I could breathe again. But Emma was quiet during the drive home, staring out the window with a troubled expression. What's wrong? I asked. This is just the beginning, she said. Rachel doesn't give up when she doesn't get her way. She escalates. What do you mean? When we were kids, if she wanted something and our parents said no, she'd keep pushing until they gave in just to make her stop. If a teacher gave her a grade she didn't like, she'd complain to the principal, then the superintendent, then the school board. She never accepts defeat. So what do you think she'll do next? Emma was quiet for a long moment. I think she'll try to destroy both of us. She was right. Monday morning, I arrived at my office to find my business partner Jake waiting with a grim expression and a stack of papers. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Rachel didn't just call here once. She's been calling our clients, telling them you're unstable and potentially dangerous. My stomach dropped. Which clients? Morrison Tech, the law firm downtown, and the medical practice in Cambridge. She told them you're under investigation for stalking and that they should consider terminating their contracts with us. She's trying to destroy my business. It gets worse. She also called the Better Business Bureau and filed a complaint claiming you use confidential information from your marriage to gain an unfair advantage in landing clients. I sat down heavily in my chair. Rachel had never shown any interest in my work during our marriage, but apparently she'd been paying attention to more than I realized. She knew exactly which clients were most important to my business, and exactly what lies would cause the most damage. "What did you tell them?" I asked. "The truth. That you're one of the most ethical people I know, and that this sounds like a personal vendetta. But Dave, if she keeps this up, we're going to lose clients. People don't want drama attached to their IT support." Meanwhile, Emma was facing her own problems. She called me during her lunch break, her voice tight with stress. "Someone broke into my locker at the hospital," she said. "They tore up photos of us and left them scattered on the floor with a note that said, 'This is just the beginning.'" "Did you report it to security?" "Of course. But hospital security is a joke, and whoever did it knew exactly which locker was mine. It had to be someone with inside access." "You think Rachel has an ally at the hospital?" "I think Rachel has allies everywhere. She's very good at making people believe her version of events." That evening, we met at a small bar near my office to decompress and plan our next move. The place was nearly empty, just a few regulars nursing beers and watching a baseball game on the overhead TV. We'd barely ordered drinks when I spotted a familiar figure walking through the door. Greg Fulton looked exactly like the kind of guy who would sleep with his married coworker. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of confident swagger that comes from never facing real consequences for your actions. He spotted us immediately and walked over with a smirk that made my hands clench into fists. "Well, well," he said, sliding uninvited into the booth across from us. "If it isn't the happy couple—" "Get lost, Greg," I said. "Actually, I think we need to talk, man to man." He looked at Emma with obvious disdain, though I suppose your taste in women has certainly declined. Emma started to stand up, but I put a hand on her arm. "Don't. He's not worth it." "You're right," Greg continued. "I'm not worth it. But neither are you, apparently. Rachel's been crying on my shoulder about how you're trying to destroy her life." "Funny," I said. "I thought you were too busy destroying your own marriage to worry about anyone else's problems." Greg's smirk faltered. "My marriage is fine." "Really? Because last I heard, your wife found out about your affair and kicked you out of the house. Something about finding hotel receipts in your jacket pocket?" The color drained from Greg's face. "How did you—" "Boston's a small town, Greg. People talk." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You listen to me, you pathetic loser. If you don't stop harassing Rachel, I'm going to make your life very difficult." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm and level. "Greg, you're a middle-aged man who threw away his marriage for a woman who's now using you as her personal attack dog. You're not in a position to threaten anyone." "We'll see about that." Greg stood up and tossed a 20 on the table. "Enjoy your little revenge fantasy while it lasts. It's about to get very real." After he left, Emma and I sat in silence for several minutes. The confrontation had been brief, but it confirmed what we'd both suspected. Rachel wasn't working alone. "This is getting out of hand," Emma said finally. "I know, but I'm not backing down. If they want to play dirty, I can play dirty too." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her a text message I'd received earlier that day. It was from an unknown number, but the content made the sender obvious. "Stop seeing Emma, or you'll lose everything." "I've been thinking about this all day," I said. "Rachel and Greg are working together to destroy both of us. They're counting on us being too scared or too decent to fight back. So what do you want to do?" "I want to remind them that I know all of Rachel's secrets, and I'm not afraid to use them." Emma looked uncertain. "David, I don't want you to become the kind of person who—" "Who what? Who fights back when someone tries to destroy his life?" "Emma, they're not going to stop. Rachel filed a false police report, she's sabotaging my business, and someone broke into your locker. This isn't going to end with us taking the high road." She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Help me remember everything Rachel told you about Greg's wife. Every detail, every complaint, every piece of ammunition we can use. You want to break up his marriage. His marriage is already broken. I just want to make sure his wife knows the truth about who broke it." We spent the next hour planning our counterattack. Emma had a remarkable memory for details, and Rachel had apparently spent months complaining to her about Greg's various shortcomings, his drinking, his gambling, his pattern of cheating on previous girlfriends. Most importantly, she remembered Rachel mentioning that Greg had been using company credit cards to pay for their hotel rooms. "That's fraud," I said. "If his wife reports it, he could lose his job and face criminal charges." "Are you sure you want to do this?" I thought about the threatening text message, about Rachel's attempt to have me arrested, about the look of fear in Emma's eyes when she told me about her locker being vandalized. I'm sure. The beauty of working in IT is that you understand how digital footprints work. People think they're being clever when they use privacy settings and delete messages, but they forget that everything leaves a trace somewhere. Rachel had made the mistake of underestimating exactly how much I knew about her online habits. She'd always been careless with passwords, using the same combination of her maiden name and birthday for everything. During our marriage, I'd helped her set up various accounts and had watched her use the same password repeatedly. She'd probably changed some of them after the divorce, but people are creatures of habit. It took me exactly 15 minutes to access her backup email account, the one she thought she'd hidden from me. What I found there was a treasure trove of evidence that painted a very different picture from the victim narrative she'd been spinning. The email chain between Rachel and her friend Sam from work was particularly illuminating. Sam worked in the legal department at Rachel's company and had been helping her strategize ways to make David pay for humiliating her. The messages laid out their plan in detail: file harassment charges to make me look unstable, contact my clients to damage my business, and pressure Emma's family to cut her off completely. But the most damning evidence was in her messages with Greg. They'd been planning this campaign for weeks, coordinating their stories and dividing up responsibilities. Greg was handling the intimidation tactics while Rachel focused on legal and financial sabotage. They'd even discussed planting evidence in my apartment during one of their visits. I screenshot everything and organized it into a comprehensive file. Then I started planning my response. The first step was dealing with Greg's wife, Linda. I'd met her a few times at company parties during my marriage to Rachel, and she'd seemed like a decent woman who deserved better than being married to a serial cheater. A little research revealed that she worked as a financial advisor at a prestigious firm downtown, the kind of place where reputation mattered and criminal associations could end careers. I created an anonymous email account and sent Linda a carefully crafted message. I didn't make accusations or threats. I simply provided her with dates, times, and locations where her husband had been with my ex-wife, along with copies of hotel receipts I'd found in Rachel's email. I also included information about the company credit card fraud and suggested she might want to review their recent financial statements. The message ended with a simple statement: I thought you deserved to know the truth about what your husband has been doing. A concerned friend. I sent it on a Tuesday morning and didn't have to wait long for results. Emma called me that afternoon, barely able to contain her laughter. You're not going to believe what happened at Rachel's office today. Tell me. Linda showed up around noon and had a screaming match with Greg in the parking lot. Apparently, she'd hired a private investigator and had photos of him and Rachel together. She threw them at him one by one while half the office watched from their windows. What did Greg do? According to my source, he tried to deny everything until Linda started reading from his text messages. Then he got in his car and drove off, but not before she keyed the side of his precious BMW. And Rachel? Locked herself in her office and refused to come out. Her boss had to send everyone home early because the drama was affecting productivity. But I wasn't done with Greg yet. That evening, I put the second phase of my plan into action. I discovered that Greg was a regular at an upscale sports bar near his office, the kind of place where middle-aged men went to drink expensive whiskey and pretend they were still in their 20s. I arrived early and positioned myself at a table with a clear view of the entrance. Greg walked in at exactly 6:30, his usual time according to his social media check-ins. He looked haggard, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled. He ordered a double whiskey and sat alone at the bar, staring at his phone with the expression of a man watching his life fall apart. I waited until he was on his third drink before making my move. Rough day? I asked, sliding onto the stool next to him. Greg's head snapped up, his eyes widening when he recognized me. What the hell are you doing here? Having a drink, same as you. I signaled the bartender. Whiskey, neat. If you think you can intimidate me... Greg, look around. We're in a crowded bar with security cameras and witnesses. If I wanted to intimidate you, I'd choose a more private location. He relaxed slightly, but kept his hand near his phone. What do you want? To talk, man to man, like you suggested yesterday. About what? About how you're letting Rachel destroy your life the same way she destroyed mine. Greg laughed bitterly. My life was fine until you started your little revenge campaign. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your wife kicked you out. Your coworkers think you're a joke, and you're drinking alone in a bar at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Temporary setbacks. Are they? Because I heard Linda froze your joint accounts and filed for separation. I also heard your boss wants to see you first thing tomorrow morning about some irregularities in your expense reports. The color drained from Greg's face. How did you know about the company credit cards? Greg, you used them to pay for hotel rooms with my ex-wife. Did you really think no one would notice? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his drink. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop helping Rachel harass me and Emma. I want you to tell her that this little campaign of yours is over, and I want you to leave us alone. And if I don't?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of one of his messages to Rachel. "Then I send everything I have to your boss, your wife's lawyer, and the district attorney's office. Company credit card fraud is a felony, Greg. You could go to prison." He stared at the screen, his hand shaking slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Linda already has copies of the hotel receipts. How long do you think it'll take her to connect them to your expense reports?" Greg finished his drink in one gulp and stood up unsteadily. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." He stumbled toward the exit, nearly colliding with a waitress on his way out. I finished my drink slowly, watching him through the window as he stood on the sidewalk, probably trying to figure out where to go since he couldn't go home. The next morning brought news that exceeded my expectations. Emma called me before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. "Greg's been suspended from work," she said without preamble. "Already?" Linda must have moved fast. According to my source, she showed up at his office yesterday evening with a lawyer and demanded to see his expense reports. They found thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. "What about Rachel?" "She's in full panic mode. She tried calling in sick, but her boss told her to come in for a meeting. Apparently, the company takes fraud very seriously, even when it's committed by someone else's husband." I felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Rachel wouldn't give up easily. Cornered animals were dangerous, and Rachel had always been at her worst when she felt trapped. I was right to be concerned. That afternoon, I received a call from Detective Morrison asking me to come back to the police station. When I arrived, she was waiting with a folder full of papers and a grim expression. "We have a problem, Mr. Harper. Rachel Harper has filed additional charges against you, claiming you've been cyber-stalking her and accessing her personal accounts without permission." My blood ran cold. "What kind of evidence does she have?" "She claims someone has been reading her emails and using the information to harass her friends and coworkers. She's also alleging that you've been following her and taking photographs." "That's insane. I haven't been anywhere near her." "Can you prove that?" "I work from home most days. I have time-stamped work logs, video calls with clients." I paused. "Wait, she's claiming I've been taking photographs?" "According to her statement, someone has been following her and her boyfriend, taking pictures of them together. She believes it's you." I almost laughed. "Detective, I'm an IT consultant, not a private investigator. If I wanted photos of Rachel and Greg, I'd hire someone to take them. I wouldn't risk my freedom by doing it myself." Detective Morrison studied my face for a long moment. "Mr. Harper, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to answer honestly. Have you accessed any of Rachel Harper's personal accounts or hired anyone to investigate her activities?" I met her gaze steadily. "I have not hired anyone to investigate Rachel or Greg. As for her personal accounts, I haven't accessed anything that wasn't already available to me through our shared accounts during the marriage." It was technically true. The email account I'd accessed was one I'd helped her set up years ago, and she'd never removed my access. Morally questionable? Absolutely. Illegal? That was a grayer area. "She's also claiming that you sent threatening messages to her boyfriend's wife." "I sent information to a woman whose husband was cheating on her. I didn't threaten anyone." Detective Morrison closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Harper, I'm going to be frank with you. This situation is escalating, and someone's going to end up in serious trouble if it continues. Ms. Harper seems convinced that you're orchestrating some kind of revenge campaign against her." "And what do you think?" "I think two people who used to be married are making each other miserable, and it's starting to affect other people's lives. I also think that if you are doing what she claims you're doing, you need to stop before you cross a line you can't come back from." "And if I'm not?" "Then you need to document everything and consider getting a restraining order of your own, because this level of harassment goes both ways." I left the police station with a lot to think about. Rachel was clearly escalating her campaign, but she was also getting sloppy. Filing false charges and making accusations she couldn't prove was dangerous territory, even for someone with her talent for manipulation. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. Rachel was many things, but she wasn't stupid. If she was willing to risk filing false charges, she must have something else planned. I was about to find out what it was. The ambush came on a Thursday evening. Emma and I were having dinner at my apartment when we heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Too many footsteps for one person, moving too deliberately to be casual. I looked through the peephole and saw Rachel standing in the hallway with two men I didn't recognize. One was tall and thin, with the kind of cheap suit that screamed process server. The other was shorter, stockier, and had the alert posture of someone accustomed to trouble. David Harper, the tall man called out. I have legal documents that require your signature. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. What kind of documents? Restraining order and cease and desist notice. You need to sign here to acknowledge receipt. Through the gap in the door, I could see Rachel standing behind the men with a satisfied smirk. She'd dressed carefully for this moment. Conservative blouse, minimal makeup, the kind of outfit designed to make her look like a victim rather than an aggressor. On what grounds? I asked. Cyberstalking, harassment, and intentional interference with business relationships, the process server replied. You have 72 hours to respond through your attorney. I signed for the papers and closed the door. Emma was standing behind me, her face pale with worry. What does this mean? She asked. I scanned through the legal documents, my anger building with each page. Rachel was claiming I'd hacked her accounts, sent threatening messages to her coworkers, and orchestrated a campaign to destroy her relationship with Greg. The restraining order prohibited me from contacting her directly or indirectly, coming within 500 feet of her home or workplace, or communicating with any of her friends or family members. It means she's trying to isolate us, I said. If I can't contact her family, I can't contact you legally. That's insane. I'm not her property. No, but you're her sister. A good lawyer could argue that dating you constitutes indirect contact with her. Emma sank onto my couch, the reality of our situation finally hitting home. She's really trying to destroy us. Yes, she is, but she made a mistake. What kind of mistake? I showed her one of the pages in the restraining order. She's claiming I sent threatening messages to her coworkers, but she included copies of the messages as evidence. Look at the timestamps. Emma studied the documents. Oh, these were sent last Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Right, and where was I last Tuesday at 2:30 p.m.? You were... Her eyes widened. You were on a video call with me and the hospital's IT department, troubleshooting their new system. Exactly, and that call was recorded for training purposes. I have an alibi for every single one of these alleged incidents. But even with evidence of Rachel's lies, I knew the legal process would be slow and expensive. Restraining orders were designed to err on the side of caution, and judges rarely dismissed them without a full hearing. In the meantime, Rachel had effectively weaponized the legal system against us. The next morning brought more bad news. My business partner Jake called with an update on our client situation. Morrison Tech terminated their contract, he said without preamble. They cited concerns about ongoing legal issues affecting our ability to provide reliable service. What did you tell them? The truth, that you're dealing with a vindictive ex-wife who's making false accusations. But Dave, they don't care about the truth. They care about avoiding drama. I understood their position, but it didn't make the financial reality any less painful. Morrison Tech was our biggest client, representing almost 30% of our annual revenue. Losing them would force us to lay off employees and scale back our operations significantly. There's something else, Jake continued. I got a call from a reporter at the Boston Globe. Someone tipped them off about the restraining order and the harassment allegations. They want to do a story about cyberstalking in the digital age. My stomach dropped. Please tell me you didn't talk to them. Of course not. But Dave, if this goes public, we're finished. No one's going to hire an IT consultant who's been accused of hacking and stalking. After hanging up with Jake, I sat in my home office staring at the wall. Rachel had played this perfectly. She'd escalated the situation just enough to make me look dangerous without providing enough evidence to prove her claims. Even if I eventually won in court, the damage to my reputation and business would be irreversible. But Rachel had underestimated one crucial factor: Emma's determination. We're not backing down, Emma announced when I told her about the reporter. If she wants to play this game, we're going to play it better than she does. Emma, this could destroy both of our careers. Are you sure? David, look at me. She took my hands in hers. I love you. Not because you used to be married to my sister, not because I want to get back at her, but because you're a good man who deserves better than this. I'm not letting her win. What do you want to do? I want to fight back, but I want to do it smart. Emma's plan was elegantly simple. Instead of responding to Rachel's accusations defensively, we would go on the offensive with the truth. Emma had been documenting every interaction with her family since our relationship began, and she had evidence of their attempts to pressure her into ending things with me. More importantly, she had access to something Rachel had forgotten about: their shared family iCloud account. Rachel never changed the password, Emma explained. She's been backing up all her photos and messages to the family account for years. Everything she's done, every lie she's told, every plan she's made with Greg, it's all there. That's probably illegal for us to access. It's my family's account. My name is on it, and I have the password. Technically, I'm just accessing my own files. The moral ambiguity of the situation wasn't lost on me, but Rachel had already crossed so many ethical lines that I'd stopped caring about taking the high road. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. What we found in Rachel's backup files was devastating. Photos of her and Greg together, time-stamped during her marriage to me. Screenshots of conversations where she bragged about playing the victim to get sympathy from friends and family. Voice memos where she practiced her story for the police, trying out different versions until she found one that sounded convincing. Most damning of all were her messages with Sam, her friend from the legal department. They'd been planning this campaign for months, researching restraining order laws and discussing ways to make their accusations stick. One message from Sam was particularly revealing. Remember, you don't have to prove he actually did anything, you just have to make it sound believable enough for a judge to err on the side of caution. This is conspiracy, Emma said, staring at the evidence on my laptop screen. They planned this whole thing. It's also our way out, I replied, but we need to be smart about how we use it. I spent the weekend organizing our evidence and consulting with a lawyer friend who specialized in defamation cases. His advice was clear. We had enough evidence to not only defeat Rachel's restraining order, but potentially file criminal charges for filing false reports and conspiracy. But he also warned me about the nuclear option. If you release this evidence publicly, he said, you'll destroy her completely. Her job, her relationships, her reputation, everything. Are you prepared for that level of consequences? I thought about the question for a long time. Rachel had tried to destroy my business, my relationship, and my freedom. She'd manipulated the legal system and weaponized her family against her own sister. She'd shown no mercy in her campaign against us. Why should I show mercy to her? Yes, I said finally. I'm prepared. The counterattack began on Monday morning. Instead of responding to Rachel's restraining order through normal legal channels, we filed our own motion with the court, including all of our evidence as exhibits. The filing was a matter of public record, which meant anyone could access it, including that reporter from the Boston Globe. I also sent copies of the evidence to Rachel's employer, Greg's former boss, and Detective Morrison. If Rachel wanted to play in the legal system, she was going to discover that perjury and filing false reports were serious crimes, but the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Emma had decided to attend her parents' weekly family dinner, something she hadn't done since our relationship became public. She arrived with printed copies of all the evidence we'd gathered and calmly placed them on the dining room table. I thought you should know what Rachel has really been doing, she told her shocked family. According to Emma's account, the dinner descended into chaos. Her parents were horrified to learn that their daughter had been lying to them for months. Her brother was furious that he'd been manipulated into taking sides in a conflict based on false information. Most devastating of all, they realized that their treatment of Emma had been based entirely on Rachel's deception. My father actually apologized, Emma told me afterward. He said he was ashamed that he'd believed Rachel's lies without even asking for my side of the story. And your mother? She cried. She said she'd failed as a parent by letting one daughter manipulate her into hurting the other. But the real victory came the next morning, when Detective Morrison called with an update. Mr. Harper, I wanted to let you know that we're dropping all charges against you and opening an investigation into Rachel Harper's conduct. The evidence you provided clearly shows a pattern of false reporting and conspiracy to commit harassment. What does that mean for her? It means she's going to be arrested for filing false police reports, perjury, and criminal conspiracy. Her friend Sam is also being charged as an accessory. I felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this wasn't over yet. Rachel still had one more card to play, and I had a feeling she was desperate enough to use it. I was right. The end came faster than I expected, and it was more brutal than I could have imagined. Wednesday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Emma and a text message that made my blood run cold. Emergency at hospital. Rachel showed up. Police involved. Come now. I threw on clothes and drove to Boston Medical Center with my heart pounding. The emergency room was in chaos when I arrived. Security guards, police officers, and hospital staff clustered around the nurses' station while patients and families watched nervously from the waiting area. I found Emma in a small office with 2 police officers and a hospital administrator. Her scrubs were torn, her face was scratched, and her hands were shaking as she gave her statement. What happened? I asked the nearest officer. Are you David Harper? Yes. Your girlfriend was attacked by her sister during her shift this morning. The attacker has been arrested for assault and trespassing. I sat down next to Emma and took her hand. Are you okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally. She shook her head. David, she completely lost it. I've never seen anything like it. The story came out in pieces. Rachel had shown up at the hospital around 6 a.m., somehow bypassing security and making her way to Emma's floor. She'd waited until Emma was alone in a patient room, then confronted her with a level of rage that shocked even the veteran nurses who witnessed it. She kept screaming that I'd ruined her life, Emma said, that everything was my fault, that I'd turned her family against her, that she was going to lose her job because of me. Did she hurt you? She tried to. She grabbed me and started shaking me, screaming that I was a traitor and a whore. When I tried to get away, she scratched my face and tore my scrubs. What stopped her? Dr. Patterson heard the commotion and came running. When he saw what was happening, he hit the emergency button and security came. It took 3 guards to restrain her. The police officer looked up from his notes. Ms. Harper, we need to know. Do you want to press charges for assault? Emma looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I don't know. She's still my sister. Emma, I said gently, this isn't about family anymore. She attacked you at your workplace. She could have hurt you seriously or hurt a patient. This has to stop. She nodded slowly. Yes, I want to press charges. The officer made a note in his file. We'll need you to come to the station later to give a formal statement. In the meantime, we're recommending that the hospital increase security and consider a restraining order. After the police left, Emma and I sat in the empty office while she processed what had happened. The physical attack was bad enough, but the emotional betrayal cut even deeper. I keep thinking about when we were kids, she said. Rachel was always dramatic, but she was never violent. I don't understand how she became this person. People change when they're desperate, I said, and Rachel is very desperate right now. What do you mean? I'd been holding back some information to protect Emma, but the attack changed everything. She needed to know the full scope of what was happening. I got a call from my lawyer yesterday. Rachel's been fired from her job. The evidence we provided showed that she'd been using company resources to harass us, and her employer decided they couldn't risk the liability. Emma's eyes widened. She lost her job? It gets worse. Greg's wife filed for divorce and is demanding alimony and half their assets. Greg himself is facing criminal charges for the credit card fraud, and Rachel's parents have cut off her financial support. So she's lost everything. Her job, her relationship, her family's support, and potentially her freedom if she's convicted of the false reporting charges. From her perspective, we destroyed her entire life. But we didn't do anything except tell the truth. I know. But Rachel has never been good at accepting responsibility for her actions. In her mind, this is all our fault. The hospital administrator returned with an update on Rachel's status. She'd been taken to the police station and charged with assault, trespassing, and violating the terms of her own restraining order. She was being held without bail pending a psychiatric evaluation. We're also banning her from hospital property permanently, the administrator said. This kind of behavior is completely unacceptable in a medical facility. Emma nodded numbly. I understand. Ms. Harper, I want you to know that you have the full support of the hospital. You're an excellent nurse, and what happened today was not your fault in any way. After the administrator left, Emma and I walked to the hospital cafeteria to get coffee and decompress. The morning's events felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in news stories. What happens now? Emma asked. Now we wait for the legal system to do its job. Rachel will probably be sentenced to jail time for the assault, plus whatever she gets for the false reporting charges. And then what? Do we just go back to our normal lives and pretend none of this happened? I thought about her question. The truth was, I didn't know what came next. Our relationship had been forged in the crucible of Rachel's campaign against us, and I wasn't sure how it would survive in peacetime. I think, I said carefully, we figure out who we are when we're not under attack. Are you having second thoughts about us? No, but I want to make sure you're not just staying with me out of defiance or loyalty. I want you to choose me because you actually want to be with me. Emma smiled for the first time all day. David, I fell in love with you before any of this drama started. Rachel's behavior didn't create our relationship. It just revealed how strong it already was. That afternoon, we went to the police station to give Emma's formal statement. Detective Morrison was handling the case personally, and she seemed genuinely angry about Rachel's escalation to violence. This is exactly what we were trying to prevent, she said after Emma finished her statement. Ms. Harper has clearly lost touch with reality. What's going to happen to her? I asked. She'll be charged with assault, criminal trespassing, and violation of a restraining order. Combined with the pending charges for false reporting, she's looking at significant jail time. And the psychiatric evaluation? That's standard procedure when someone exhibits this level of erratic behavior. If she's found to be mentally incompetent, she'll be committed for treatment instead of serving jail time. As we left the police station, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Rachel had brought this on herself through her own choices, but it was still painful to watch someone self-destruct so completely. But the story wasn't over yet. That evening, Emma's parents called and asked if they could come over to talk. When they arrived at my apartment, they looked older and more fragile than I remembered. The events of the past few weeks had taken a toll on the entire family. "We owe you both an apology," Robert said without preamble. "We allowed Rachel to manipulate us into treating you terribly, and we're ashamed of our behavior." "We should have listened to Emma from the beginning," Patricia added. "We should have asked questions instead of just believing Rachel's version of events." Emma hugged both her parents, tears streaming down her face. "I missed you so much. I was so afraid I'd lost you forever." "Never," Patricia said. "You're our daughter, and we love you. We should have supported you from the beginning." Robert turned to me with an expression of genuine remorse. "David, I said some terrible things about you during the divorce. I believed Rachel when she said you were a bad husband, but now I understand that she was the one who destroyed your marriage." "I appreciate that," I said. "But what matters now is moving forward." "We'd like to do that," Robert said, "if you'll let us." Over the next hour, we talked about everything that had happened. Emma's parents shared details about Rachel's childhood that helped explain her behavior, a pattern of manipulation and victim playing that had started early and been enabled by well-meaning family members who wanted to keep the peace. "We created a monster," Patricia said sadly. "We taught her that she could get whatever she wanted by playing victim and making everyone else feel guilty." "You couldn't have known it would lead to this," Emma said. "Maybe not. But we should have set boundaries years ago, instead of always giving in to keep her happy." When Emma's parents left that evening, I felt like we'd turned a corner. The family was healing, the legal system was working, and Rachel's campaign of harassment was finally over. Or so I thought. The final twist came 3 days later, delivered by Detective Morrison in a phone call that changed everything I thought I knew about Rachel's motivations. "Mr. Harper, we need you to come to the station immediately. We've discovered some additional evidence that you need to see." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that suggests this situation is more complicated than we initially believed." Emma and I arrived at the police station within an hour. Detective Morrison was waiting with a thick file folder and a laptop computer. Her expression was grim. "During our investigation into Ms. Harper's activities, we executed a search warrant on her apartment and electronic devices. What we found was disturbing." She opened the laptop and showed us a series of documents that made my stomach turn. Rachel had been keeping detailed files on both Emma and me for over a year, long before our relationship began. Photos taken with a telephoto lens, copies of our work schedules, records of our daily routines, and transcripts of conversations she'd somehow recorded. "She's been stalking both of you since before the divorce was finalized," Detective Morrison said. "This wasn't a reaction to your relationship with her sister. This was a premeditated campaign that started much earlier." "But why?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Detective Morrison turned to another screen. "According to her journals, she believed that you and David had been having an affair during her marriage. She convinced herself that you were the reason her marriage ended, not her own infidelity." I stared at the evidence in disbelief. That's insane. Emma and I barely spoke during my marriage to Rachel. "We know that. But Rachel had created an elaborate fantasy where you two were secretly in love and plotting against her. She saw evidence of betrayal in every innocent interaction." The detective showed us more files, hundreds of photos of Emma and me at family gatherings, screenshots of our social media interactions, and detailed analyses of our body language that Rachel had interpreted as proof of a secret affair. "She'd been planning this revenge campaign for months before you actually started dating," Detective Morrison continued. "When you finally did get together, it just confirmed what she already believed to be true." Emma was crying now, overwhelmed by the scope of her sister's delusion. She destroyed her own life chasing a conspiracy that didn't exist. "It gets worse," the detective said. "We found evidence that she was planning to escalate beyond harassment. She'd researched ways to frame you for crimes, including planting evidence and making false accusations of intimate assault." My blood ran cold. She was going to accuse me of rape? According to her notes, that was the next step if the stalking charges didn't stick. She'd already written out a detailed statement and was researching how to make physical evidence appear convincing. I sat back in my chair, stunned by the revelation. Rachel hadn't just been trying to break us up or ruin my business. She'd been planning to destroy my life completely and send me to prison for crimes I didn't commit. What happens now? I asked. Now she faces additional charges for stalking, conspiracy to commit perjury, and planning to file false criminal reports. With her mental state evaluation, she's looking at either significant prison time or long-term psychiatric commitment. And the evidence of the planned false accusations? That will be part of the case file. If she ever tries to make those accusations in the future, we have documented proof that she premeditated the false reports. After we left the police station, Emma and I drove home in silence. The magnitude of what we'd discovered was overwhelming. Rachel hadn't just been a bitter ex-wife lashing out. She'd been a dangerous stalker with an elaborate plan to destroy our lives. I feel like I never knew her at all, Emma said finally. Maybe none of us did. Maybe she's been hiding this side of herself for years. How could I not see it? I'm her sister. I should have known something was wrong. Emma, you can't blame yourself for not recognizing mental illness. Even trained professionals miss the signs. That evening, we received a call from Emma's parents. They'd been contacted by the police and informed about the additional evidence. The conversation was heartbreaking. We don't know what to do, Patricia said through tears. She's our daughter. But what she was planning? It's monstrous. The doctors say she needs long-term treatment, Robert added. They think she's been delusional for years, possibly since childhood. We missed all the signs because we wanted to believe she was just dramatic, not actually sick. What kind of treatment? Emma asked. Inpatient psychiatric care, probably for several years. She's completely disconnected from reality and potentially dangerous to herself and others. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and family meetings. Rachel was found mentally incompetent to stand trial and committed to a secure psychiatric facility for treatment. The judge ordered that she have no contact with Emma or me for a minimum of 5 years, and any future contact would require approval from her treatment team. Greg, meanwhile, was sentenced to 6 months in jail for the credit card fraud and ordered to pay restitution to his former employer. His divorce was finalized, leaving him with minimal assets and a criminal record that would follow him for years. Sam, Rachel's friend who had helped plan the harassment campaign, was fired from her job and given a suspended sentence in exchange for cooperating with the investigation. The reporter from the Boston Globe wrote a story about the case, but it focused on the dangers of untreated mental illness rather than the sensational aspects of the harassment campaign. My business recovered quickly once the truth came out, and several former clients apologized for terminating their contracts based on false accusations, but the most important outcome was the healing of Emma's family relationships. Her parents, brother, and extended family all made efforts to rebuild their connections with both Emma and me. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, takes time to repair, but the foundation was solid. 6 months after Rachel's commitment, Emma and I were married in a small ceremony at Boston Common. Her parents walked her down the aisle, her brother served as a groomsman, and her colleagues from the hospital filled the small gathering with joy and laughter. During our honeymoon in Maine, Emma and I talked about the future and what we'd learned from our ordeal. Do you think she'll ever get better? Emma asked as we watched the sunset over the ocean. I hope so, not for our sake, but for hers. No one deserves to live trapped in that kind of delusion. Do you ever regret how we handled it? The investigation, the evidence gathering, the public exposure? I thought about the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. But no, I don't regret defending ourselves. If we hadn't fought back, she would have destroyed us both. And if she gets better and wants to reconnect someday, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Emma, you don't owe her forgiveness just because she's family. You don't owe her a relationship just because she gets treatment. Your first responsibility is to yourself and to us. Emma nodded, then smiled. You know what I don't regret at all? What? That text message you sent her. Today I'm busy. Date night with your sister. If you hadn't been brave enough to tell the truth that day, we might still be hiding. And you might still be isolated from your family. Exactly. In a weird way, Rachel did us a favor. She forced everything into the open, and now we don't have to hide anymore. As I watched my wife, laugh at her own observation, I realized she was right. Rachel's campaign of harassment had been intended to destroy us, but it had actually made us stronger. We'd been tested in ways most couples never experience, and we'd emerged with a deeper understanding of each other and ourselves. A year later, I received a letter from Rachel's treatment facility. She'd asked to write to me as part of her therapy, and her doctors thought it might be beneficial for her recovery. The letter was short and carefully worded. David, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but my doctors say I need to acknowledge what I did to you and Emma. I was very sick for a long time, and I convinced myself that things were true when they weren't. I hurt people I should have protected, and I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand now that none of this was your fault. I hope you and Emma are happy. Rachel. I showed the letter to Emma, and we discussed whether to respond. In the end, we decided that silence was the kindest option. Rachel needed to focus on her recovery without the complication of contact with us, and we needed to continue building our life together without looking backward. 2 years after that first text message, Emma and I bought a house in a quiet neighborhood outside Boston. We hosted Emma's parents for dinner every Sunday, and her brother brought his kids over to play in our backyard. My business was thriving. Emma had been promoted to head nurse in her department, and we were talking about starting a family of our own. Sometimes, late at night, I would think about that Saturday afternoon when Rachel's text had changed everything. I need to talk, today. Such a simple message, but it had set in motion a chain of events that revealed truths, destroyed lies, and ultimately led to justice. My response? Today I'm busy. Date night with your sister had been intended as a moment of honesty in a relationship built on deception. I'd had no idea it would expose a conspiracy, save my reputation, protect my freedom, and lead to the love of my life. Rachel had texted me expecting compliance, submission, and continued control over my narrative. Instead, she'd gotten the truth. And the truth, as it turned out, was more powerful than all her lies combined. Justice had been served, love had conquered manipulation.